The land of chocolate. Chocolate, half price. La 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 la.
Mr. Simpson.
La 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 la.
Mr. Simpson.
Huh?
As much as we're all just wanting 2020 to fade from memory as fast as possible, it wouldn't be right to go out with a final bit of positivity from us. Welcome to our Caribbean chocolate cake launch for 2020. This year, we have again put out a 4-pack, which includes the original Caribbean chocolate cake beer. This has retained that fabulous deep chocolate, balanced with vanilla wafers from the Forester cypress wood. However, for this year, we've given it a new dimension with our new nitrogen doser to give you the richest, creamiest mouthfeel ever. Our variant this year, Pancake Stack, Caribbean chocolate cake meets maple sugar and cinnamon, need I say more? Our luscious and thick imperial version Death By has had an ABV nudge and continue our change from last year. It benefits from the Brazilian hardwood Amberana. This, even in the smallest quantity, adds a depth of spice akin to Christmas aromas. And not forgetting barrel-aged Caribbean chocolate cake, capping off a record year for barrel releases from us at Siren. Obviously, we cannot pour draft for our launch, so have concentrated our efforts to get this to you in cans with the help of over 100 partners, not just in the UK, but Europe and even Singapore this weekend. The beers will also be available on our website. Find out more at sirencraftbrew.com/CCC. I hope you enjoy the beers as much as we do.
And we're live.
How are we doing, Matt?
Good, thanks, Tim. You?
I'm good. Yeah, it's good to be back on a Siren live stream with you, my friend.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. We are joined initially by a very special guest as well, Mr. Darren Anley. Evening, Darren.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good.
It's been a long time.
It has been a while.
Yeah, it's been a couple of hours.
We kind of took everything online for a while, and now we're sort of back online for a bit to see the year out, I think, for a very special occasion.
Great stuff. Cool.
So just to explain to everyone a bit about what's going on, obviously Caribbean Chocolate Cake live tasting. So tonight we're going to be drinking these bad boys, and hopefully you've all managed to hold off. These have been sat in my fridge for a couple of weeks now, and every day it gets a little bit more difficult to open that fridge and see them in there, but they're still there. We're going to be joined by Sean, our head brewer, who did get locked out of his house about half an hour ago.
He made it though. He's made it.
He is apparently back in, so he will be here. And then we're going to be joined by Willie Harcourt-Cooze from Willie's Cacao as well, so it's going to be really good. But we wanted to chat to you initially, Darren, just to give a bit of a background to Caribbean Chocolate Cake. So let's go right back to the beginning. How did it all come about, this great beer?
Oh, fantastic. Cool. Well, actually, can I just firstly just say Caribbean Chocolate Cake for us is a massive part of the year. We're really lucky in that at Siren we've got quite a few parts of the year that are real nice staple parts of the calendar for us. You know, Maiden for us is always at the same time of year. Project Barista obviously didn't happen this year for obvious reasons, but is always generally around the same time. And the Caribbean Chocolate Cake launch. So, I just really wanted to take this chance to say we are absolutely, 2020 has been a crap year for everybody. And, I just wanted to say we've been blown away at Siren by the level of interest and the support that you guys have shown us. So, thank you so much for that, because, it really means a lot to the 40 odd people that work with us that are trying to put these great beers out. So, firstly, just wanted to kick off and just say thank you. Thank you for all the support that you've shown us so far this year, and thanks for everything with the Caribbean Chocolate Cake launch. But yeah, going back to your questions, and sort of waffle on there, but just the project actually came about off the back of Ryan, our original head brewer, was good friends with Wayne Wambles, who is the head brewer for Cigar City. He's actually got a slightly different role within the Pancake group now, but and he was over brewing with Marston's for a Wetherspoons project where they used to get a load of US breweries and UK breweries together. And we managed to get him to come over and sneak over to Finch Hampstead and do an extra special brew with us, which was great to do. And Wayne, being somebody who really loves kind of trying to build a story around what he wants to brew, work with Ryan to come up with this pretty delectable thick recipe for a beautiful stout, loaded with cypress wood. The original recipe actually used a hop that we can't get anymore called OCC, which is orange. I mean, it was pretty straightforward in its name. It didn't come up with some cool fancy name. It was OCC for orange, chocolate, and coconut, which that was really where the whole Caribbean name came from. But that hop is no longer available. I think they deemed it just too inefficient to continue. But that was where the original beer came from.
Excellent. And it's sort of it's developed since then. So we've had quite a few different iterations of it over the years. What's been your favorite version, and what's your favorite one this year as well?
Oh God, the questions. Favorites. You know what? I mean, the beer. The base beer itself actually hasn't changed outside of a little bit of a change in the hops, but to be honest, this beer was never about the hops anyway. So I've got to say this year my favourite is the nitro, because I think nitro just adds such a big richness to the beer. So I love it. But I loved the white stout last year. I thought that was a really good take. And the Amberana, which is a Brazilian hardwood that I'm sure Sean's going to tell you all about, that sits in the Death Pod is pretty stunning. And I think it really adds a nice tweak to the beer. But no, for me, if I'm going to pick a favourite, I'm going for Nitro this year.
Nitro, yeah, I agree. Matt, what's your favourite this year?
Death By, I think for me,
Death
it's just so big, and especially on a really cold, miserable day like this, something that bold and warming really goes down a treat.
Amen. All right, Darren. Well, we're not going to take up much more of your time. Are you off to a pub or something?
That was actually the plan, but unfortunately, babysitters have let us down. So I'm in for the night. So I shall be watching from afar.
Okay, cool.
Not on screen though. So
good news is we do have a head brewer, so we'll switch over to him. We'll have a chat to him. But thanks for coming on, Darren, and thanks for starting this crazy range of beers.
Yeah, no worries. Well, look, have a great evening. Have lots of fun tasting through, and I'll see you all in a bit.
Cheers. Take care, Darren. Matt, just before that, I think we should go back as well and just give an introduction to what you and I do before we get Sean in. Who are you and what do you do at Siren Craft Brew?
Yeah, so my name is Matt. Some of you probably seen me before on here or met me around the brewery. I look after events in 2020, which is an interesting, or has been an interesting role this year. But yeah, just lots of these digital events, lots of mucking in at the brewery, making sure that everyone gets their orders as well. It really has been all hands to the pump this year, hasn't it? But yeah, normally you will see me, and hopefully next year you will see me at lots of events all around the country. So I'm really looking forward to getting my hands back on events.
Good stuff. And my name's Tim. I do all the content and social media here at Siren, so you've probably chatted to me online. Just one more thing, you'll see down the bottom of your screens at the moment that we do have a 10% offer code available tonight. So if anyone wants to order this evening, use CCC Live 10 at the shop, and you'll get 10% off your order. Without further ado, let's get the man in himself. Sean, welcome to the chat. How are we doing?
Hey, how you guys doing?
You made it back in then.
Yeah. Rushing out to get the glasses from the car, and I locked myself at the house. Luckily, the landlord lives around the corner.
I think you're probably going to see a Siren beer called Sean's Locked Out coming in the next month or so.
Commemorate the event.
It writes itself, doesn't it? You probably said one of the funniest things you've ever said to me as well, Sean, which was, I wanted to have a shave before coming on. And I really like the idea of you just being completely clean shaved, but luckily we've still got bearded, Sean.
Next time when I got some more time.
Amen. So we're here to drink through the beers, and I think we're going to start with the base beer.
Yes.
We're going to start with Nitro Caribbean Chocolate Cake. So if anyone is drinking along at home, then do let us know. As you'll see, a few of the comments are going to pop up on the screen. So, like this comment here, from lockdown to lockout. I love it.
Keep the banter coming, guys. Keep the banter coming.
Amen.
Well,
and
at least the pubs are open if I got locked up. But
amen. Until 10.
I think the first thing to mention on this, of course, is it is nitro, and we do need to hard pour this beer. So let's go for it. Let's hard pour, shall we?
Ideally, you'll have one of our nitro designed glasses.
Do it.
I'm a big fan of hard pouring, I must admit. I think it's a really exciting way to pour, and you just get that unbelievably beautiful cascade. It's still going.
It's really soothing and pleasing, isn't it? Look at that.
It's a really beautiful thing to see. It's a great cascade on that, and you just end up with that just inch thick layer of just creamy goodness.
Fantastic. Let's dig in, I guess.
What's great about this one is also the color they had. It's really brought that out with the nitro. Nice brown color.
So Sean, small introduction to yourself then. You're obviously our head brewer. When did you join Siren? Year or so ago?
Yeah, about a year and a half now. So started in the middle of last year. Just basically I started as we got the canning line up and running. I think that was my first day I arrived, and there were about 5 engineers commissioning the canning line.
Excellent.
So,
Yes. I remember. I think my first chat with you was at the canning line, and you just had no time to talk to me because you were already deep in with it, just getting all of that sorted.
Yeah. My first job was unboxing the labeler.
My goodness, the chocolate from Adrian there, and that is true, isn't it? The first thing you get with this beer, I just think, is that sort of boozy chocolate smell. Like it's fresh, milky chocolate.
It's rich, milky chocolate, yeah, and that's what we kind of went for. And we played around with cacao quite a lot, and at the moment we settle on using nibs and husks. We'll speak to Willie later from the chocolatiers, but I think the husks are actually a byproduct for them. So, but they add like a nice dimension to the cacao for us, not just the nibs.
Amen. So Adrian said here, explain nitro. Is it just nitrogen in the can? So we've got a couple of blogs on the website you can find, but Sean, let's have a little quick overview of what nitro does.
Cool. Well, yeah, an interesting thing, the way I look at it with nitrogen, so carbon dioxide can chemically dissolve into beer and stay there if the temperature's right and the pressure's right. With nitrogen, it's an inert gas, so it's a little harder to actually keep the nitrogen in the beer, so it can physically dissolve, but it struggles to chemically dissolve. So it's really hard to nitrogenate a beer in tank. And obviously yeast produces CO2 already, so it's a lot easier to do that. So one of the ways to do nitro beers in small pack or cans is to drop a little drop of liquid nitrogen into the can just before the lid comes on. And so we've got a little doser that we've been playing around with this year and kind of optimizing, and we thought we had to put it in this beer this year because it's new, it's fun, and it works great with the beer as well. So little drop of nitrogen goes in, seals the can, and makes the can, so if you feel the cans, they'll be slightly harder because the pressure is a bit higher. We have to then keep those cans cold for 5 days to allow the gases to equilibrate and dissolve in. So we have a lower CO2 content than our normal beers. There is CO2, it is carbonated, it's light, it's almost like cask beer carbonation. And then that releases the nitrogen when you open the can. If you've got a widget, but for us, to break that nitrogen back out, you've got a hard pour it. So if you've got a widget, you just open the can and the turbulence from the widget does it. But with us, you got a hard pour and you get that nice creamy head.
Nice. Nice. It's a good thing.
We haven't had a sip yet.
Yeah. Cheers. So, Sean, why did we decide on nitro for CCC this year?
Mainly because we thought it would work really well with the beer. We've been playing around with it with obviously in Broken Dream. We've been looking at some hoppy red ales. We've just done a micro porter. And so we thought it would work well on this. I'm interested to see how it works in this with being such a thick beer. And it just makes it creamy and smooth.
It's the perfect candidate for it for me because it just, I don't know, it just drinks like a hot chocolate, but a cold hot chocolate with a cold Irish hot chocolate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and one of the things we thought about when we're doing this is that big creamy head that sits on top going to stop aroma coming out? But I could smell it as soon as I opened the can and poured it. I could smell the chocolate. I hope everyone else could. It really comes through, and it was one of the things we wanted to work on this year with the beer is like the cacao and the chocolate flavor coming out. Last year we had a good aroma and we didn't feel it necessarily followed through as well. So this year we worked on that, and I think we've done really well with this.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell by Tim's face just what he thinks of it. We don't even have to ask him what he thinks of the beer. Just the sheer amount of joy on his face as he drinks it. This year's seems so much richer with a lot more chocolate. What did we do different this year to kind of to get that? Because I mean, I'm sure everyone agrees that this is just insane chocolate, really.
So I think whenever we rebrew a beer, I look at the recipe again, and it's quite interesting to see what some of the previous head brewers have done, and I put a little tweaks in it where I feel it will be interesting. And we brought back pale chocolate malt, which I think is really good malt to make a chocolate base. But then I've increased the amount of cacao that we used. We've also played around with a thing called the spin bot, which we've got. It's a tank that we can recirc the adjuncts that we add into the beer. So we spin the cypress, cacao, and cacao husks all at the same time. And we played around with that now enough. Last year was the first time I got to brew CCC, and I kind of went with the procedures that we've used previously. This time I wanted to spin it a bit longer. And the nice thing about when we're doing CCC is we're tasting the beer every day. We normally do two in tank at a time, and we're tasting them. And that's how we optimize the spins. And we set aside 6 days for each, and we used all 6.
To backtrack slightly there, Sean, just to explain the spin bot a bit. So with the question that Matthew Hayes asking there, so cold steeping, normally we might put some bags in the top of a fermentation vessel, right? Like a tea bag and a cup of tea. And that's only really hitting the liquid at the top. With the spin bot, what we're doing is we're taking beer from the bottom of the tank into the top of the spin bot. That spins all the way down with all the cacao nibs and the wood, which will go through the wood spirals. And then it just keeps circulating. So the whole of the tank is getting sort of hit by the rich chocolate and the wood. And that's why there's so much flavor.
We recirc the tank, I think, 3 times within an hour at the speed that we run the pump. So I think originally we soaked the wood in bags in a tank, which already, if you put it in a bag, you're restricting flow over the wood. Tim, if you can hold that spiral up again, you can see the spirals. The reason we use spirals, especially with the cypress wood, is those spirals create a massive surface area. And so you get more contact with the wood, and the liquid actually penetrates right through the wood. I've done some experiments with it, and if we soak them over a weekend, they actually sink because the liquid just penetrates into the wood. So by spinning, we're agitating that, and that increases the flavor extraction. And then the spin bot's designed with a cylinder in the middle that allows beer to flow through it, but flow through all the adjuncts at the same time. So we're trying to maximize contact time, amount of contact, and get the whole tank to rotate through it, so you don't get stratification or anything like that with the flavors.
Should we pour our next beer while we're talking?
Yeah, I just actually had one more question for Sean while we kind of while we pour the next beer. But what I mean, we use cypress wood in this one. We use it in all of them, but why cypress wood?
So cypress wood's one of the things that's ingrained into CCC. It's a really interesting wood because I feel last year when we brewed it, I really struggled to find where the wood fitted in. But as we've done more projects with wood and we use the spin bot more, I think the great thing about cypress wood, it's supposed to add a kind of wafer vanilla flavor to the beer, which you definitely get this kind of biscuity, wafery, thing in combination with the cacao. But it also extracts tannins from the wood, which kind of cut through the sweetness. We've got a hell of a lot of lactose in this beer as well. And it creates a lot of body and that smoothness and that richness, but it cuts through that with the tannin. So the wood kind of does 2 things for me. It adds that kind of wafer, biscuity kind of thing, as well as cuts through the sweetness.
All right. So while we're pouring this, question here about the spin bot. And obviously the spin bot's a pretty serious bit of kit. Is there anything that a home brewer could do or, to get a similar effect, Sean?
Yeah, so another way, I think like what we've got is we've got a big enough tank with a pump that can recirculate the whole tank. For a home brewer, I think infusion probably works best on a small scale. Your extraction in a small volume will be much quicker. So you can put it either in the fermenter or you can take a little bit out your fermenter, soak it in whatever ingredient you want, if it's cacao or orange peels or something, and then put that back in the fermenter. Obviously, with home brewing, hygiene is a bit more difficult to do when you're moving beer around. So it depends what equipment you got. But yeah, it's basically a tank that we can use to. We have done a beer recently where we've just put a portion of the beer in and left it over 2 or 3 days to infuse without the agitation. But for CCC, especially doing 4 beers, we need that agitation to get maximum flavor extraction.
So, cool question here. Winemakers use oak. Lots of them add oak chips, which gives a vanilla flavor. But the cypress brings a different vanilla to oak. Is that right?
Yeah, I think vanilla is a lot more intense. The cypress, that's why the first year I kind of really struggled to place the cypress. And that's why I wanted to make sure we had more time on the wood this year. And I feel, so it's almost like in your back of your mouth when you swallow the beer, you pick up the tannins there, and it kind of cuts through the sweetness in the body of the beer. We use oak, and we use oak spirals in other beers. But for this beer, cypress, I think being a wood from either Florida or the Caribbean was kind of one of the reasons we went with that.
I thought you were going to say cypress then.
Yeah,
Right.
so obviously, it's a legacy thing to kind of carry on with the cypress.
I could talk about and drink Nitro Caribbean chocolate cake all day long, but we have to move on. So beer up next is going to be the new one for this year, the special, which is Caribbean chocolate pancake stout. So obviously not nitrogenated, just a standard carbonation on this one, but it still pours with a really big thick head due to the nature of this sort of great big thick beer.
Yeah, don't hard boil this one.
I think you still get that sort of huge sort of chocolatey hit, but also the maple is just what hits you there for me.
Yeah, so in the past we played around with bigger beers that we do. We played around with yeast blending, but what I'm trying to do now at the moment is use our house yeast in certain beers where we've previously thought we couldn't get to those ABVs, using it and just giving better starting conditions for the fermentation. And so the one thing we want to do with this beer is leave quite a bit of body. And so that's something that we've worked with. And I think when you use yeast that can ferment, well, they ferment further and they're able to eat sugars easier. Whereas with just our house yeast, we've managed to keep the body and the sweetness of these beers this year where we want them, which was we decided we wanted to increase the final gravity, which is the final sugar concentration of every beer. Yeah, so it's pretty much the same grain bill between this and the original, except I added a bit of smoke malt to this, just with pancake stack and bacon, kind of to lend that in. So there's a little slight smokiness to it. But, yeah.
Question on the screen there, Sean. Have we ever considered a cherry variant? Have you ever considered cherry? I know we've done the cherry with the Broken Dream recently. But obviously, that aside, what's the process to take you into choosing the variants for each year?
So I think something really fun that we do at Siren is we try to get everyone to get involved in recipe ideas, and we put it out to the brewers. So I think for my first year, we had a list of, I think, 12 or 13 variants that we went back and looked at. We kind of have got a lot of ideas already. I'm sure there's no more that we haven't thought of, but we kind of brought it down to 2, and we picked Pancake stack because a few of us were really keen to play around with maple syrup in CCC, and that was kind of the basis behind going this route. But we also didn't want to just put in an extract or maple essence that dominated the beer, because the key thing with the variant that we do is it's always got to be CCC first, and then the variant sits on top of it. And I think like last year, like I think Darren mentioned, we did the white stout, which was kind of, I enjoy the idea of a white stout and blindfolding someone and giving them the beer to taste and trying to think what it is. And that's why I also like brewing black IPAs, which hopefully we'll see some more of next year. But the idea of this one was just, let's see where we can get maple syrup into it. And we did quite a bit of research. Unfortunately, we lost out on a really good ingredient due to COVID and lead times. But we'll be playing around with that later in the year, or next year at least. But yeah, so the beer, so it's got the chocolate kind of background. We spun it on the same adjuncts as we did in the Spinbot, but instead of only cypress wood, I put some spirals of maple wood that they then toast, and the maple kind of caramelizes and the sugars caramelize outside of it, which is a really interesting wood to play around with. We got a small sample of the wood we wanted to play with, which is bourbon barrels that are being chipped up, and that had, after bourbon, they've had maple syrup aged in them. But unfortunately, we couldn't get the shipment in time. So that's something we'll look at another stage. And then we put a lot of maple syrup in on the hot side. So we put 100 kilos of maple syrup. Maple syrup is not the cheapest ingredient to find. But the problem with it as well is it's incredibly fermentable. So if we just put maple syrup in, I think through the vigorous fermentation process that happens, because the yeast is quite, the convection currents move the yeast and the beer around a lot, we lose a lot of that aroma. So we had to do stuff in the Spinbot as well. We interestingly looked at a spice called fenugreek, which has an incredible link to maple, but it also just smells like curry. So we did some trials with that, but it kind of focused more on the curry spice side than maple in a beer, whereas the aroma, we could get the link. But it's something we might go back to in the future, but decided not to put it in this beer.
Fair play.
Nice. I mean, it's such an incredible beer. It's so much maple syrup in it, but like, you know, in such a kind of intense way.
Yeah. So it's a kind of, I think there are a few like layers of maple in there from the different ways we put it in, which bring that out. But the other thing that we put maple wood in, and then we played around with Amarana, which I won't talk about too much now because that's one of the key things in Death By. But we put a small amount of this wood in, and really comes through. So I was considering putting some cinnamon and nutmeg spices in the hot side, and decided not to because of the Amarana. But that spicy kind of gingerbread, kind of nutmeg, cinnamon kind of spice coming through, that's from the Amarana wood.
Sean, apparently Wayne suggested some mushrooms with a link to maple, but we decided not to go for that.
Yeah, we heard that afterwards, but yeah, that's a interesting thing.
Yeah, like mushroom maple, it's not a big link for me, but you know, you've got to hear these things out and you've got to try them, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what we like to do, is we like to play around with different things. And you know, I've been at Siren, like I said, 1.5 years now, and like, you know, we did even though it was Ruber, we played around with IPAs with cedarwood. We did a brute with oak spirals, which I thought was amazing.
Mm.
So it's playing. You don't know what it's going to taste like unless you try.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have a pilot plant, but I think we try or pilot kit, which is a 100-liter kit. But I think we like to just go.
Amen. All right.
And commit.
Talking of trying it, Matt, have you got anything other that you want to find out about this beer, or should we move on to your big favourite, the Death By?
Yeah, I think Sean's covered a lot of it, really. I mean, there was a lot of maple syrup that went in there, and it's interesting to hear, the how you do that, and how you kind of get that into that recipe. But I think, let's move on to Death By, because I'm very excited by this one.
You just want to move on.
Well, just before we move on, the one thing is trying to put maple syrup in the cold side would be how you'd get a great aroma, but you'd make a very fermentable beer in packaging. So that's why we haven't gone that route. So, but yeah.
So it's getting that maple experience, pancake sort of stout experience, but in a way that's sort of a good way to brew, and not literally just putting in too much of too much maple.
And there's a big dark chocolate kind of background there as well, which I think the smoke malt takes the cacao to, and the cypress wood probably brings it that way.
All right. Well, let's pour some Death By. While we're doing that, Sean, here's a question for you. What's the beer trends for next year? Have we had enough of IPAs?
Well, I think there's a trend heading towards lagers at the moment because everyone's got a bit of spare capacity with pubs being closed. So we've been playing around with a few lagers. We've got a fun project we're going to do soon through the colder months of aging the lager.
Nice.
And yeah, I know a lot of people have said hazy IPAs are a phase and they're going away. I don't think they are. I think they're a great style, enjoyable. We are about to install a water treatment plant, which will allow us to play around with styles like that a lot more and get some softer mouthfeels. Our water is incredibly hard.
Amen.
I think, we're also focusing on some big stouts through next year, I think, and our barrel project is really coming alive. We're moving Steve, who's a barrel manager, but more focused on his role's been head of packaging and doing the barrel side on the side. So we're putting him full time in the barrel store, and I think there's going to be some really exciting projects coming out of Steve.
Well, Sean, on that note, there's a really exciting project coming out today in the Fairground Trio. So I'll tell you what, after this
there
chat,
you go.
Get yourself onto the website with your 10% off code and go and get some Fairground Trio beers, because we tasted them yesterday and they are absolutely insane. There's a new blog on the website as well, so head to sirencraftbrew.com/blog to check that out and learn all about those beers. But for now, number 3, which is Death By, which is sort of known as the big boy of the sets. I think it came up in ABV this year slightly. Is that right, Sean? I think we had 9 something last year.
It came up a lot. So, yeah, well, not necessarily a lot, but push it above 10. And I think the plan is to keep pushing that, I think, for the next year.
That's just made a lot of people very happy.
Very happy.
So, yeah, last year, so I got to play with Amarana for the first time that we used it, but also kind of went in pretty blind. So we put 50% Cypress and 50% Amarana, and the flavor's a lot more pronounced than Cypress, but it's an amazing word. The only problem I had last year is we only ordered enough for CCC. So this year we've ordered enough to play around with beers next year with it.
Nice.
I think, when we got the wood spirals, we passed them around to smell, and we got everything from it smells like incense, like that you get if you walk into a shop that sells incense or something, to Tonka gingerbread. One of the brewers is convinced it smells like Christmas. So it's just such an interesting wood that then really just comes out on beer. Like it's one of those flavors where you put it in and you actually get the reward from it. And you know, I think it comes out fairly strong in the Pancake, which we just did, and we put 30 spirals in. In this, we put 180 spirals. But because this is such a, like we talk about beer in the brewery as like a noise, and if everyone's making a noise, you can't hear necessarily anything. Like so, everything's got to be loud together. And so with Death By, you know, we captured the 180 spirals this year, just because it's a loud beer already. You've got to be loud to shine. So you get, but in this beer, it doesn't dominate. Like it's there, and then you got the cacao, and you got the. We've also got vanilla in this, so it's just a big beer with a lot going on. And I think every time you drink it, you'll pick up a different flavor.
Yeah, there's a real vanilla like sweetness in this. Is that actual vanilla that you've put in there, or is it coming from from something else?
It's coming from vanilla pods that I hand sliced myself because it was a really busy day trying to turn the spin bot around to get the spin going. So I sat in the office and sliced each individual bean up, but we use Madagascan vanilla beans, and you got to cut them open and make sure that you get that. It's all about contact to the beer to get the extraction. And vanilla is a really interesting one, like how you get a vanilla flavor in some food or something compared to what the actual vanilla beans smell like. It's just really.
I think we lost you a second there, Sean.
Oh, it's gone a bit roboty.
Yeah, it's gone a bit roboty. That's it. We've broken Sean.
Yeah.
I think you turn the auto.
I was going to put my cable. I was going to put my cable in, but I didn't have time with getting locked out.
We're getting locked. You brought it up.
You can be forgiven.
So you mentioned the Amberana and that we've bought a lot more this year, and you plan to use it in beers in the future. Is there anything that you can tell us about that, or you're not allowed?
I think we're allowed to. So, we got some. So, got a few ideas. I want to put it in an IPA. No, I'm just kidding. But I've had an idea of doing a Tonka and Amarone beer for a while at Stouts. So, we're still debating whether to make that a white stout or normal big 10% stout. So, that's how far we've got with that. But we're going to play around with it in some stouts for sure.
Yeah, my vote is for the white stout because I absolutely love a white stout. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Willie waiting in the wings to talk chocolate. So should we move on to our fourth and final beer to chat barrel aged? If you're drinking along at home, then we're moving on to the barrel-aged Caribbean chocolate cake, which this year is 8.8%. And in the video at this top, you heard Darren say that it caps a record-breaking year of barrel releases this year. I think one of the good things about Sean coming in, working on the canning line, is it allowed barrel manager Steve to really get to grips. Not just working on the canning line, Sean, but it allows barrel manager Steve to really get to grips with just spending some time with the barrels and working on some blends. And he has released some incredible stuff this year. And
Steve's really good at doing the blending and picking out the flavors that work for us. So it's great what we're doing with the barrel project. So I think the most challenging thing with barrel aged CCC is trying to.
I knew you were going to put that comment on the screen. I knew it.
I've got the worst beard of them all.
Oh, brilliant. Sean, do you know what barrels were used in this, and do you know what ratio that we're looking at for barrel age?
So it was rum and bourbon this year, and I think that's it. I think it's 2/3 rum and 1/3 bourbon. Steve got the blend together, and it's an interesting thing. Normally, when we put beers in barrel, we like to let the unknown kind of do a little bit of the kind of storytelling in a way to let us know where we're going to get to. But with CCC, we always want to bring it back to have that character of CCC, and that's what Steve's kind of got to work with. So we've tried spinning it on the adjuncts before going into barrel, and this year we decided to actually do the spinning completely afterwards, which I think has worked well because you then got a solid base of the barrel character to work with the adjuncts. It's also really hard because you've got to, the barrels change over time. So when Steve takes his sample, which would be as close to the blend day as we can, that's where we've got to kind of decide the adjuncts. So we had a really good idea what we were going to do, and then we kind of adjusted once we've got the blend into our stainless steel tank. And then, so we also blended it with a bit of fresh beer, fresh CCC beer. So we've got to brew that, and then we put back into barrels, the barrels that we empty. So it's, what was really interesting with this, on the spin, the cacao came through stronger than any other beers. It was incredibly chocolatey. So I don't know where the science behind that, to be honest, but it was just something we all noticed, that it was just much more pronounced than the other spins.
Sure. What are the challenges of making an annual release barrel aged beer, as opposed to it's got a lot to live up to, and you've really got to target at that, as opposed to just a beer you can leave in barrels and just leave to nature and just see what happens.
Yeah. So I think some of our releases we can put in and let the final product. We only let everyone know what the final product's going to be once we know what it is. With CCC, it's kind of we never try to make it exactly the same as the barrel aged CCC the year before, but we've got to have certain characters, and so I think the challenge is making sure that we are only blending the barrels that we're happy that have the characters we want in it. Whereas other projects, we can kind of, if it takes a turn to a better thing, we can change the idea and go with that. Whereas if we know what the outcome's got to be, we've got to head towards that, and that's what we're always aiming at. So, yeah,
it's such a delicious.
And this beer, you say it was spun. Was it spun before when you put it in barrels, or did it come straight out of the barrel and then get spun? How did the spinning work with the barrel aged version?
So no, we spun everything post barreling. So we have in the past played around with spinning before and after, but with this one, we decided to put it straight into barrels, let the barrel give the character that it gives, and then we spun. So we take all the barrels out, put them into stainless steel FE or BBT, and then we spin that, and we know what adjunct to add. And like I said earlier on, when we're doing CCC, myself, Matt, who's my lead brewer, and Steve get together in the morning. We take a sample, we all taste it, and we discuss where it's at, carry on the spin. last thing we do before we leave, unless we feel that we need to taste that. We all taste it together again. We discuss it. We say what we expect it to be like in the next morning, and we do that. So we're tasting all the time. Different. Like I said, the chocolate came through massively on this, so it's different for every spin. And so we like to do 6 days. That was the plan. But if it tastes better, or we're happy with the taste at 5 days, we would stop it at 5 days. But the advice that we got from Wayne actually a few years ago that was passed on to me is, when you think you're there, go for another day over, so that flavor carries through to the final product. So that's something we always keep in mind.
Go big or go home, right?
Amen. On that note, there's a lot of people saying that we must surely not be drinking everything, and we're not. I have some nitro left, and I have some Death by left. Pancake's nearly gone, and the barrel's nearly gone. But you don't have to try and keep up, guys.
We're not.
Everyone in the comments is getting a little bit feisty. Guys, let's get Willie in so we can chat the chocolate link to this. I think because there we go. Willie, good evening.
Hi. Good evening to you all.
How you doing? All right.
Yeah, good. I was going to say it's impressive stuff, drinking all these beers.
That's the way to do it, isn't it? Just sit there, watch. But I know you've been sat there for sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, watching us, and I'm sure you've got the beers with you as well. So.
Well, I'm one in, and it's incredibly delicious.
Good.
I was thinking, am I expected to keep up? I stopped on one. I've got the pancake one ready.
Nice.
Which I thought I would try next.
Okay.
Well, you touched on a point there, saying it's incredibly delicious, and you being a chocolate man, I think there's so many different ways to enjoy chocolate, and in so many different formats. And I think what this series of beers is showing a new way or a different way to really enjoy chocolate. And the essence of chocolate really comes out in these beers. That for me, I don't think I've had a more chocolatey beer.
I don't know either. I mean, I think what's really amazing is, I've obviously sourced the beans directly from the farmers, and you've chosen a real. I think right at the beginning, I sent you chocolate bars, and we all discussed it, and we decided that was the bean. It's the least acidic bean. It's got complex flavors. Maybe of coffee notes, maybe it could have some berries in there sometimes, a little nutty, and that sourcing, that flavor is carried incredibly well. But I normally take it all the way through, conch it, for up to a month. So I would roast the beans, I would shell them, I would give them a very light roast, to protect those flavor notes I'm talking about. A lot of chocolatiers roast their beans really heavily, or big manufacturers do, because their beans don't have much flavor. So doing a light roast to protect all those flavors, and then I'm refining it, and it turns into a liquid because over 50% is cocoa butter. But it will stay in my conching tanks for a dark chocolate, 100% up to 3 weeks to finish a batch. So you guys, before I've done all my complex playing around to achieve, I love the way you said, do it and then add an extra day. Actually, we're the opposite in the sense that when we're conching the cacao, we always, we never take it the whole way, because if we take it the whole way and add the sugar, then we can find we passed it. So we have to go before. So you really understood the bean, to be really honest with you, for your own purpose. But it's lovely to see. I mean, it is my favorite drive in Venezuela. A couple of times a year I've been going there to check on the beans. But the actual bean is one of the nicest beans we work with. So it's lovely to see somebody else take that raw material and do their own real thing, not like not even like cook a cake. You know, do you know what I mean? Where you've got the finished chocolate and you cook a cake and here it is. Doesn't it look beautiful? Doesn't it taste nice? You know, where someone else has defined it. But you've actually taken the roasted bean, but before anyone's done anything with it. And what I really loved was the way that you used the cocoa shells as well, because we sell the cocoa shell as a tea. And we're always joking about the tea because it's forever. You know, you make a cup of tea, pour the boiling water, drink it, and it drops to the bottom. And then you can refill it. And it tastes different. You know, you've got a different set of flavors come out. And then you can do it again. I mean, and some of the girls in the office go and go and go and go. I mean, and even cold, it's delicious. So I don't know, a lot of things are not nice when they're cold, but actually even the tea as a cold drink is delicious. So adding those kind of two flavors together, you know, obviously you've achieved something quite interesting.
So Willie, it was actually yourself that recommended that we use the husks in Caribbean chocolate cake a couple of years ago, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, I because of the tea, because there's so much flavor in there. You know, I mean, I said I can't. You know, I can't think. Well, we're not working with anybody else who, you know, any other producer that would think of using the shell. But I can see with the beer and listening to you guys talk about the wood and, you know, your spiral vortexes and, like, you know, you have the perfect mechanism to grab that flavor and take it out. Really. Yeah. I mean,
really, yeah. I'm sorry. Go on. I was going to say we've got some of your really delicious chocolate here. That some of the people watching, if they got the deluxe box, they were lucky enough to get hold of. And I've tried some of this drinking chocolate, and it is by far the most insanely delicious drinking chocolate I've ever had in my life. It's absolutely stunning. What's the process between, you know, taking a bean and turning it into this?
I've got to tell you about the story, the Medellin story, because we work with Wheeler, a place in Columbus, San Agustin. We produce a bar, but you know, it's always nice from the point of view of spreading yourself out with cocoa farmers, and not putting all your eggs in one basket. And there's a lot. I deal a lot with Venezuela, where you're taking a Rio Caribe, but fortunately, the people I work with actually have got larger and manage the situation very well. But a few years ago, as things got tough, I spread into Colombia. And that Medellin bean, you know, I mean, a crazy flight. I took off here. I arrived in Medellin at kind of midnight. And then at 4:30 in the morning, they picked me up. And we went up into the mountains and then traveled across they called it the Ruta de Leche, the route of the milk. And it's right on top of the Andes. You're cruising along and then you drop down. And all the way down, kind of cascading rocks, and all the way down, back down to sea level, where we had the Medellin cocoa farmers. And there's a kind of band of guys, all with the same bean. It was one of the most amazing trips ever. But they had the bean is quite interesting. It's lighter than the Rio Caribe, but we treat it in exactly the same way as a chocolate. So most people are getting crappy bean, they're roasting and shelling it. Probably over roasting, give it flavor, and then pressing it. But we treat the chocolate like or the cacao like we're going to make a chocolate. So, you know, so we conch it for 3 weeks, you know, and then instead of adding the sugar, we press it, you know, and take out 20% of the butter, leaving 30%, which is more than other people, and that extra cocoa butter in it, and the fact that we've taken all that trouble. I mean, I don't think other people are taking that. You know, I mean, we're like you guys, to be honest with you, about flavor. Everything is about the ingredients. You know, if you look at what's inside our beer, your beer, sorry, my chocolate, is there anything else in it? No, it's not about. I mean, I'll say vanilla. I know you've added that to you, but in chocolate, people are generally adding vanilla and soy lecithin and other things. Certainly vanilla to hide the fact that their beans aren't very good. You know,
so is it the comparison I've been making is between Willie's Cacao and Siren, or Willie's Cacao is to Cadbury, say that Siren is to Budweiser or something like that. That love that sort of care, attention. It's craft chocolate, isn't it? It's a
Yeah,
quality
exactly.
product.
I mean, I'd like to think we've got, it's difficult because there's three of you, but I've got as much passion as, individually as you guys. I can see the energy is incredible. The swirling woods and the vortexes. I mean, everything's on the merit of the ingredients. I mean, what's in my dark chocolate? You've got cacao, Barbados raw sugarcane, and a tiny bit of natural cocoa butter. So not deodorized, tasteless, natural cocoa butter. Compared to other people who've got vanilla and all sorts of other stuff in there, and they're hiding the fact their beans aren't very good. So everything is about the flavor of the ingredients.
So I have some of your chocolate here, Willie. The Wonders of the World pack. And I'm going to give that a little try while you're talking about that, because it excites me big time. I love chocolate, and like Matt, I've been trying the drinking chocolate. I've been having it with oat milk, so it's really, really thick and creamy. So good, so good.
I mean, the great thing about those Wonders is, for me, chocolate is like a wine. So in that Wonders, there's 5 single estate. So not single origin, which means the bean came from a country, which is a bit like saying the wine is French. They actually came from one farm, and every year, even though some of the notes might change, the actual flavor profile is the same. But, I've tried to look around the world and choose farmers and beans that are very different. So, the Indonesians, caramelly toffee, you might love it, you might hate it. The Peruvian is tastes like raisins. People actually send me emails and go, did you put raisins in it, really? And obviously I haven't. They're all natural. It's all about, for me, they're like wines, fine wines, And it was like that 100 years ago. Probably the same as beer. Let's be honest. I mean, what happened? I mean, hallelujah with craft beer, to be honest with you, because let's not name brands, but all those big watery brands, I don't know what happened. They kind of took over the market, and everybody was so accepting. And we've had a great explosion where people suddenly realize now, there's flavor. Not just in cloudy olive oil, which was the kind of breakthrough that happened about 10 years ago. It's happening in beer as well.
So we've got a comment there. It says El Blanco is my favorite, which is your white chocolate. Superb white chocolate, not nasty and sweet like most white chocolates. What's the difference between a dark chocolate and a milk chocolate and a white chocolate? What's the difference process in there?
Well, I mean, the white chocolate is made with cocoa butter, and a cocoa bean is over 50% cocoa butter. And I've only put 30% sugar instead of most people leading brands 40 to 60%. Which is incredible. I mean, they're just doing it for profits, really, because obviously sugar is cheap, but there's no vanilla in it. So there's cocoa butter, British milk powder, and Barbados raw sugarcane, and natural cocoa butter. So when I buy my cocoa butter, it's roasted, shelled, pressed beans, but it's got all that aroma and acidity in it. And actually, we conch the cocoa butter like it was the cocoa bean, but all the flavor is about the ingredients, whereas if you look on any other white chocolate, it's all got vanilla in, which hides the fact that and too much sugar, so it doesn't really taste of anything.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. What's your favorite way to enjoy chocolate? Do you like it in bar format or beer format? I'm a beer now. Careful now.
Yeah, beer's my vote.
I'm a hot chocolate man, to be honest with you. I wake up every morning, I have breakfast. I have homemade toast, half an avocado, 2 fried duck eggs, a heavy grate of cacao, and then some chili on it every morning. Unless
amazing.
I can't get hold of it.
Chocolate and duck eggs in the morning.
Every morning, chili and cacao. Like the whole kind of moly Mexican dish is, the chili lifts it. I tell you, once you've done it, you will never turn back. There's no other breakfast.
Really, we've got a comment. We've got a comment saying, what me and Tim are on the same page here. What is conching?
What is conching?
You mentioned it a few times.
I beg your pardon. Okay, so very good point. Yes, very important. So, cacao has certain acidities and unwanted flavors. So conching is the agitation of the chocolate to remove those unwanted flavors. Now, you know, we're doing that at 45 degrees, okay, in a machine which has a big wheel which spins, and then we draw air through it. You know, the big chocolate companies are doing it 60 or 70. You know why? Because obviously the hot drives off the flavors, unwanted flavors very quickly. But of course, you lose other flavors as well. So that's why they can do it in a few hours, and why we spent up to 3 weeks doing it.
Wow.
So very good point. I mean, you know, so conching is you know, and you can't if you over conch, then obviously you're going to remove, you know, perhaps remove too much acidity. So there's a very fine point, and it's all done like you guys are talking about, tasting, you know, at the perfect point. And we don't allow just one person. It has to be more than one person has to agree this is the right flavor, you know, because somebody could have come in after a heavy night, you know, and be tasting wrong or whatever. So you always got two people, and it always has to be hand tempered, you know, which is the heating and cooling to make the bar so you get the shine and snap. So it's in the right format. But conching's very roasting. I mean, I always say there's three things, you know, that make good chocolate. Yeah. There's the genetics of the bean. That's the DNA, where it comes from. There's the post-harvest, so that the beans have been properly fermented and dried. So when you pick a cocoa bean, you put it into a wooden box and you cover it with banana leaves, and you ferment it up to a week to 10 days, turning it once a day. And it reaches temperatures of kind of 50 degrees, you know, and that cooking breaks down, you know, and develops the flavor in the chocolate bean. If you didn't do that, you wouldn't achieve the flavors. I don't think most people realize the amount of work that's gone into it. And then, of course, it goes onto a patio and it's turned all day, up to a week to dry it. And it's a long process. And then the chocolatier, the third thing, perhaps has the most responsibility, because he could over roast it. So when you reach that stage and you roast the beans to the perfect roast, protecting those flavor profiles, you know, if you look at that 5 Wonder box and you see all the different cacaos with those raisiny caramel, if you over roasted it, like some coffee brands, very popular and huge that I won't mention, are so roasted, you know, that I mean, they're burned, to be honest with you. Why are they burned? Well, because if they roast them that much, they can get an even profile and they can make forever and a day the volume that they want. But it's not about the flavor of the bean. I mean, a lot of people used to say to me, well, you know, why is dark chocolate taste bitter? You know, and I said, well, actually it doesn't. But, you know, a lot of people are using inferior beans, so they're roasting it really heavy, to get a flavor. And that, obviously, that heavy roast creates a bitterness.
So talking of the dark chocolate, I'm pretty interested in cooking, and I know Matt does a lot of barbecue. And I'm sure, Sean, you'd like to do a bit of cooking as well, being an ingredients man and a brewer. I am a big fan of putting a bit of dark chocolate into some chili, so I'm going to save back some of your San Agustin Gold here to use in a chili. Now, I'm actually a vegetarian, so I'm going to use this in a vegetarian chili. What's your sort of favorite go-to chocolate and food recipe pairing recommendations?
Well, you know, that's interesting you say that, because people don't really, and I hate to say it, a lot of chefs don't either, and even a lot of very smart restaurants would prefer to choose an obscure chocolate maker so they've got something interesting that no one else has got. But actually, none of them are really sourcing their particular beans to support the dish that they're making. So, for example, if you're going to make a mousse, you know, I do a classic chocolate mousse with a bitter chocolate case. I make the case out of a Madagascan, which I think you heard earlier. You know, it's kind of got a fruity, some ice called summer fruity flavor. I make the mousse with the Indonesian, which gives a caramel flavor, and those two combinations are perfect to serve it with a fruit salad. So you've got your fruit, you've got your chocolate, and you've got your summer fruity chocolate. So you really got to think about, you know, to simplify it even more, you're making a gravy, you're making a jus. You know, you'd use a little Peruvian chulacanes, because it's got a lovely raisin profile which you add to your gravy. You know, so thinking about the chocolate and what you're going to use the recipe for, what the recipe is actually for, and pairing them together, I personally think is really important.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
the Holy
delicious.
Grail, I'm just looking. Let me go and find a Holy Grail. I'll be back in a second.
He's off.
He is an absolute legend. I think we can all agree.
There's a lot of
him.
there's a
quite
lot of
disappointed.
pro Willie comments.
I think
Quite disappointed. This is the first time I'm speaking to him. Well,
I've only got one left in the house, but that's a block, and I would say that's the chef's weapon. You know, it's 100% pure cacao, so it's like the nibs that you bought. Okay, that I've refined and conched for 3 weeks, but actually that's all made in 100-year-old Spanish longitudinal conching tanks. Yeah. And that is what I mean. I say this is the chef's weapon because it lives inside your olive oil. You put a little bit in your gravy, your chili con carne, on your eggs in the morning, or you make a mousse. But I drink one of these 90-gram blocks every day. Yeah,
Every day.
with water and a little bit of sugar. Yeah, and we were all joking about the amount of chocolate I eat because they say that the Europeans eat 10 kilos of chocolate. But we worked out that somewhere between 50 and 70, because 90 grams a day, if you add it up to add 30% sugar, it's like 150 by 7, it's a kilo. That's 50 kilos of 70%. You know, and I mean, I'm not exercising, but you know, I'm looking pretty good. So it just
Pretty good, mate.
thing. Well, I'm looking pretty good from the point of view I've not put on some vast kind of amount of weight from eating chocolate. So, you know, I always say that the right kind of chocolate is good for you.
Willie, I can guarantee that neither Sean, Matt, or I are going to stand up and do that with our bellies because you're in better shape than all of us.
Absolutely no way.
It's just pure fat. I'm on a different kind of, you know.
I'm going to join the Willie diet. I'm going to start eating chocolate every single day. So there's a question here which is guided towards Matt. Best way to utilize chocolate in barbecue. I'm not sure who's best to answer this, Willie or Matt. But
The only
Matt,
time I've
give
ever
it a go.
used, the only time I've ever used chocolate in barbecue is after I've finished barbecuing. Sometimes I get a bit of tin foil and I get a banana, kind of slice the banana down, put bits of chocolate in it, wrap it in the tin foil, and I just leave it on the barbecue for, you know, until you finish eating whatever you are, and just leave it there for hours, just to kind of for the chocolate to melt into banana, and it's just this gooey kind of chocolatey mess. I think that's the only time I've ever used chocolate in a barbecue, and I actually learned that from Cub Scouts. We used to do that and just leave it on the fire, and it just reminds me of Cub Camp, really. But it's so good. But Willie, I don't know if you've got any other suggestions.
I'd love next time to add a little bit of rum and sugar to that.
Oh, there we are. Willie's just absolutely pimped it up.
That could be. I mean, you know, we've often enough we've busted with all sorts of herbs, your steak, and whacked it on. You have to be a little bit careful because it can be burned. But while we were in the farm in Venezuela, and we didn't have a TV or anything, so it was a constant thing of food and whatever. And we grew these pigs, and the shade trees of the cacao are called mihao. They're from Africa. But the colonialists, everything had a reason. And the reason they planted them as the shade trees because they had this big bean, like a broad bean, with a little fruit off it. And that doubled up as pig food. And so being kind of organic and not wanting to use the local kind of horrible alimento that they use, I paid the girls and the guys for the kids to collect the beans. And we fed our kind of American white pigs with them, which absolutely, I mean, and then so we had 70 mango trees beside the house, producing 40 tons of mangoes. So when they weren't eating the mangoes, they'd eat the black beans. And then we kind of went one further and thought, God, what about how do we get the chocolate in the meat? So we would make these concoctions with the liquidizer, and underneath the cacao tree, we had ginger as well. And we used to whiz up the ginger, white wine, and chocolate, and then get these big syringes and inject it into the meat.
Nice. All right.
It was unbelievable. It really was.
A couple of questions for you, Sean. Here, one of which is, Sean, what's your cat's name?
It's Fergal.
Fergal, of course.
Nice.
And all this talk of bananas. Any chance of a banana CCC? What do you reckon? I'm not buying that.
Well, funny enough, what Willie was saying is the second thing on the list for CCC this year, other than Pancake Stack, was Mexican mule kind of stout. So I think we're going to have a chat about that for next year. Adding a bit of spice. I think a little bit of spice with Amarana would be incredible. And if you've got chocolate that works with that, or cacao that works with that, that sounds like something we can look at doing.
I love the idea of the Mexican kind of cakey kind of mule. That gets my vote.
What would you like to see, Willie? What would you recommend as a flavor pairing for one of these beers?
Well, I mean, I love the banana. I do really. Some of my team don't like bananas, but I think they're great. I mean, I think if you're going to make one, I'm going to have to quickly go to Venezuela and get you some of my bananas from the farm. I still remember an American guy standing on the beach going with his American drawl many years ago saying, "I'm never going to eat another banana when I get home." And I said, because I didn't know what bananas were until I got here.
Yeah.
But I love your idea about mole. I mean, the mole is you're back on the flavor, because the thing about mole is there's so many ingredients. You've got the mulata, the anchoa, and the pasilla chilies, and they're not hot. You take the seeds out. That's all about the flavor. You've got almonds, you've got oregano, sun-dried tomatoes, sesame, peanuts. They put in vegetable oil in as well, but they bring all those things in, and they're all creating layers of flavor. Which is interesting. And it is obviously, as I've heard you talk about it, it's getting that balance of flavor, right. Because obviously when you're in your beer, I'm imagining some things are louder, shout louder, I think you were saying earlier, than other things.
There's a lot of love for a banana CCC, but there's also a lot of love here for a chili CCC. And I'm not in for that. That's me officially saying I'm out of that idea. But
can I just say something about that?
It'll be balanced.
There was I would say a famous chocolatier called Arthur Westbrook. You won't know his name, and people don't know who he was, but he worked on the team. I think it was Cadbury's, where they invented one shot, which is putting something inside in the center of it, making a ball with a cream center. And he sadly died now, but he was one of the chocolatiers, older chocolatiers that I know that are true romantics. Yeah. And he used to always say, put a tiny bit of chili into his orange, because the chili, not too much, not hot. So when you say hot, I think people think hot is hot, No. Enough that it opens your taste buds, and just lets the flowers in. You know what I mean? I mean, just that, not like all the flavors you're talking about, where you don't talk about putting, everything is a building block of different flavors, and it's just something that just like a receptor that goes,
Yeah, and I think chili works in beer like that in different ways, but you can either have just too much and then it's undrinkable, but you also have a little bit that builds each time you sip the beer. That works quite well. But yeah, you're making a beer that people are gonna have once and enjoy, and then go, I don't want a second because the chili is too much. So it's that little touch that opens up other flavors is, I think, what we'd look to do.
Yeah.
And when I was a few years back, I got lucky enough to go to Mexico with the brewery I was working at, and went to their festival there. And the two best beers of that festival were both mule-based beers, stouts, and they were incredible, really, really good. So it's definitely something I want to do at some stage, whether it's CCC or not.
Well, it's not like we ever experiment, Sean.
Sounds like back to Mexico for some research.
Yeah, I think we need a trip together, Willie.
I'll carry the bags.
Amen. And Willie, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Listen,
It's been a real pleasure.
Love, guys. Lovely to talk to you. I felt right at home. It's really great. Really, really nice.
It's we all in the beer world, and we all talk so passionately about beer, and when we hang out, we're all always so passionate about beer. So it's really genuinely wonderful, and seeing the comments flying about you as well. It's just great to hear someone talk so passionately about their product, and I love that.
Great to meet you all for a beer one day.
Absolutely. And
Definitely.
Willie, tell us your website. It's Willie's Cacao.
WilliesCacao.com.
WilliesCacao.com. So get in there for the shop. We're going to try and stock some Willie's Cacao in our shop as well, and you can get some stuff in the tap yard at the moment as well. So do buy it because it is beautiful. Willie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Really great to see you.
Take care.
Willie.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so
Willie.
much. Cheers. Sean, also well done for getting back in your house.
The commitment.
That was very well done. Thank you for the good comments. Thank you for 4 more amazing beers. Looking forward to next year, right?
Yeah, so I think we got a few ideas to play around with stuff next year, which we're excited about. So yeah, we'll keep it posted. One thing we're going to do is play around with other beers in the year to help us. But yeah, I'm really happy with these. I feel a lot more comfortable with the process that we do with the Spinbot, and yeah, I think we're just gonna keep growing this. It was an amazing launch. Like the brew team worked their asses off to get it. I think you guys and the marketing team. Shout out to Andy for getting it all done. He asked me to do that. Damn it.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find it to put it on the screen now, but there was a question earlier that said, will CCC be in keg this year? It is in keg.
We did. Yeah, we did, and we sent it to some of the launch sites, which unfortunately I don't know who they are, but there should be somewhere on our website or something like that. We will be bringing it to festivals and stuff like that when that starts happening again. So.
Yep, yeah, it is in keg. It will go out. I think there might be some sort of second wave of Caribbean chocolate cake once we hit keg. The difference will be obviously this year's core element, the nitro Caribbean chocolate cake isn't nitro in keg, so people will have that on keg and just have the normal one, but it's just as good.
Yeah.
Matt, Sean, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Pleasure.
We've all enjoyed a beers. How much have you got left, by the way, guys?
I mean, I'm working my way through my death by, which isn't a chore whatsoever. Just while we're on the shout outs, I just wanted to shout out the warehouse team. I think who have worked about. I've probably had one day off in the past 3 weeks to try and get all this CTC out that you bought to you. So just big shout out to them because I think they're going to need a good rest over Christmas.
Amen, and thank you from the people behind the beers. Just thank you everyone for your orders and your continued support. It means a lot. It's keeping this industry going. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a good release. We enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we enjoyed making it as much as you guys enjoyed drinking it.
Absolutely. Well, yeah.
Amen.
I definitely enjoy drinking it. So anyway, cheers, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who has watched as well. Thank you to everyone who's commented. This should be available on YouTube as a recording as well. So cheers. We will be back. I believe we might be looking at some sort of end of year live stream thing. So look out for that. If not, enjoy your advent calendars. Enjoy your Caribbean chocolate cakes and enjoy your Christmas and your December. Cheers all. Take care.
Thanks, Tim.